In the vast expanse of the Galactic Council's territory, where mighty dragons soar between stars and entire species bow before their ancient power, there exists a truth that terrifies even the most fearsome predators. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness from the most unexpected sources can reshape the destiny of entire civilizations. What happens when a creature bred for conquest meets a human bred for compassion? What occurs when unlimited power encounters unlimited heart? Tonight, in the forgotten maintenance tunnels of Orbital Station Kepler 442b, a janitor's simple yes to a desperate plea will set in motion events that will make the galaxy tremble. Not with fear, but with hope. This is the story of how humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, our weapons, or our cunning. It's something far more dangerous to those who rule through fear, our stubborn refusal to abandon those who need us most. Marcus Chun had been cleaning the forgotten corners of Orbital Station Kepler 442b for 3 years, and in all that time, he had never heard anything cry in Maintenance Tunnel 7. The sound that echoed through the narrow passage wasn't mechanical. It was organic, desperate, and heartbreakingly young. He paused, his cleaning cart's wheels squeaking to a halt on the metal grating. The station's night cycle had begun an hour ago, casting long shadows through the maintenance areas where only janitors and repair drones ventured. Most of his colleagues had already finished their shifts and retired to their modest quarters, but Marcus always took his time. The solitude helped him think, and the steady work kept his hands busy while his mind wandered to the family he'd left behind on Earth. The crying came again, a series of small, choked sounds that seemed to echo from the junction ahead. Marcus had workstations all across the frontier for the past decade, ever since the accident that had claimed his wife and daughter. He'd seen plenty of strange things in the dark corners of humanity's expansion into space, but this was different. This sounded like a child. His work boots clanked against the metal floor as he moved forward, abandoning his cart. The tunnel branched in 3 directions ahead, each leading to different sections of the station's infrastructure. The environmental systems hummed around him, recycling air and maintaining the delicate balance that kept 30,000 beings alive in the vacuum of space. But beneath that familiar drone, the crying continued. "Hello," Marcus called out softly, his voice carrying down the tunnels. "Is someone there?" The crying stopped immediately, replaced by what sounded like panicked scuffling. Something was definitely moving in the shadows ahead, something trying very hard to hide. Marcus approached the junction carefully, not wanting to frighten whatever was there. As a janitor, he learned to move quietly through spaces where others worked and slept. He'd also learned that most problems could be solved with patience and a gentle approach, whether they involve a clogged recycling system or a homesick crew member having a breakdown in a supply closet. The left tunnel showed nothing but the usual tangle of pipes and conduits. The right tunnel was equally empty, filled only with the soft glow of safety lights and the distant hum of the station's massive engines. But the center tunnel, there huddled in an alcove behind a maintenance panel, something small and dark was trying to make itself invisible. Marcus crouched down, making himself as non-threatening as possible. In the dim light, he could just make out a shape about the size of a house cat, but with features that were definitely not feline. The creature had wings, small, translucent ones that seemed to catch what little light was available. Its eyes, large and golden, watched him with the kind of desperate intelligence that spoke of sapience. "Hey there, little one," Marcus said gently, using the same tone he'd once used with his daughter when she'd had nightmares. "You look lost." The creature flinched at the sound of his voice, but didn't run. Instead, it shifted slightly, and Marcus caught sight of scales that shifted color in the light. Now deep blue, now purple, now black. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. This was a dragon hatchling. Dragons were the apex predators of the galaxy, the oldest and most powerful of the council species. They controlled trade routes, commanded fleets of ships, and held territories that spanned entire star systems. A single adult dragon could reduce a planet to ash if they chose to, and their word was law across most of civilized space. They were beautiful, terrible, and utterly beyond the reach of ordinary beings like Marcus. Yet here was one of their young, alone and frightened in a maintenance tunnel, looking at him with eyes that held far too much pain for something so small. "You're hurt," Marcus observed, noticing the way the hatchling favored its left wing. A thin line of what looked like silver blood traced down its side. Dragon blood, which was worth more than Marcus's entire life savings. But all he could think about was how young it looked, how scared. The hatchling made a sound, not quite a whimper, but close. Then, to Marcus's amazement, it spoke. The words came out in heavily accented standard, the voice high and musical despite its distress. "May I stay here tonight?" The simple question hit Marcus harder than any grand declaration or demand might have. This powerful being, this creature that would someday command the respect and fear of entire worlds, was asking permission, was saying please in the most basic way possible. Marcus looked at the hatchling, really looked at it. Beneath the magnificent scales and the promise of future power, he saw something achingly familiar. He saw a lost child, far from home and desperately in need of help. "Of course you can," he said without hesitation. "But you're hurt. Let me help you with that wing." The hatchling's eyes widened with surprise. In all its young life, it had probably never heard those words from anyone outside its own kind. Dragons, Marcus knew from the news feeds and documentaries, were solitary creatures who valued strength above all else. They didn't ask for help, and they certainly didn't expect to receive it from lesser species. "You would help me?" the hatchling asked, its voice barely above a whisper. "But I am nothing to you. I cannot pay you. I cannot even tell you my name." "You don't need to be anything to me," Marcus replied, settling more comfortably on the floor. "And you don't need to pay me. That's not how this works." The hatchling tilted its head, genuinely confused. "I do not understand. In my clan, everything has a price. Every favor must be repaid. Every kindness has a cost." Marcus felt his heart break a little at those words. What kind of life had this young creature lived that kindness was foreign to it? He thought of his own daughter, who had been roughly the same age when she died. She believed in magic and fairy tales, in the fundamental goodness of people. She'd never had to learn that kindness came with a price. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The hatchling hesitated. "I cannot say. Names have power among my kind. If I tell you mine, you could use it against me. Then what should I call you?" Another pause, longer this time. I do not know. No one has ever asked me that before." Marcus considered this. Dragons, according to everything he'd learned, were proud creatures who spoke their lineages like battle honors. The fact that this one couldn't or wouldn't share its name suggested something was very wrong. "Well," he said, "until you're ready to tell me your real name. How about I call you Luna? You've got these beautiful scales that change color like moonlight." The hatchling, Luna, stared at him with those large golden eyes. "You wish to give me a name? A human name? If that's okay with you." Luna was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then almost shyly it nodded. "Luna. I like this name." Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in months. "Good. Now, Luna, let me take a look at that wing. I'm not a doctor, but I've patched up plenty of cuts and scrapes over the years." As he moved closer, Luna didn't retreat. Instead, the hatchling extended its injured wing with a trust that seemed almost impossible given their brief acquaintance. The wound wasn't as bad as it had first appeared, a clean cut that had already stopped bleeding, probably from catching on a sharp edge somewhere in the station's maze of corridors. Marcus pulled his emergency first aid kit from his belt. Every station worker carried one, and his was better stocked than most. He learned the hard way that being prepared for injuries could mean the difference between life and death in the depths of space. "This might sting a little," he warned, preparing an antiseptic wipe. "But it'll help prevent infection." Luna nodded bravely and held perfectly still as Marcus cleaned the wound. The hatchling's skin was warm to the touch, warmer than human skin, and the scales were smoother than he'd expected. They felt like polished stone rather than the rough texture he'd imagined. "There," he said, applying a small bandage. "That should do it. Dragon healing is supposed to be pretty remarkable, so you'll probably be good as new in a day or two." "You know of dragon healing?" Luna asked, sounding surprised. "I've read about it. Dragons are famous throughout the galaxy, you know. Your people are in all the history books, all the news feeds. You're considered the most powerful species in known space." Luna's expression darkened. "Power," the hatchling repeated, and there was something bitter in its young voice. "Yes, that is what we are known for. Not wisdom, not kindness, not beauty. Power." Marcus sensed there was a story there, but he didn't push. Instead, he settled back against the wall, making it clear that he wasn't going anywhere. "Want to tell me how you ended up in a maintenance tunnel? This is pretty far from dragon territory." Luna was quiet for so long that Marcus thought the hatchling might not answer. When it finally spoke, the words came out in a rush, as if they'd been held back for too long. I ran away, Luna said, from the proving grounds on Draken Prime. All young dragons must go there when they reach their first century to prove they are worthy of the clan name. But I could not do what they asked of me. What did they ask you to do? Luna's wings drooped. To kill. They brought prisoners, beings from conquered worlds. Criminals, they said, though I did not know if this was true. We were told to destroy them, to show our power, to prove we could be strong like our elders. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He'd heard rumors of dragon proving grounds, but he'd never imagined they involved executing prisoners. And you couldn't do it? I tried, Luna whispered. I tried to be what they wanted me to be. But when I looked at the prisoner, a young Zalari female with cubs of her own, I could not bring myself to hurt her. The flames would not come. The elders said I was weak, that I brought shame to my bloodline. They said I was no true dragon. The pain in Luna's voice was unmistakable. Marcus had heard that tone before, in the voices of homeless teens who'd been kicked out by families who couldn't accept them, in the words of workers who'd been fired for refusing to compromise their principles. So you ran? Marcus said gently. I ran, Luna confirmed. I stole a transport pod and fled into the outer systems. I have been hiding for, I do not know how long, sleeping in cargo holds, foraging for food, always moving. I thought I could find somewhere safe, somewhere far from dragon space where no one would know what I was. But your pod was damaged? Luna nodded. I tried to land on one of the outer moons, but there was a storm. The pod crashed. I managed to reach this station in an escape pod, but I had to sneak aboard. I have been hiding in these tunnels for 3 days, trying to find a way to get passage to somewhere else. Marcus looked at this small, scared creature and felt something shift in his chest. He'd been running too, in his own way. Running from memories, from the pain of loss, from the life he'd built and lost on Earth. He'd found a kind of peace in his solitude, in the simple routine of his work. But, sitting here with Luna, he remembered what it felt like to care about someone else's well-being. You're safe here, he said firmly. At least for now. But, Luna, you can't keep living like this. Hiding in maintenance tunnels, scavenging for food. That's no life for anyone, especially someone as young as you. I have no choice, Luna said quietly. If I return to dragon space, I will be cast out formally. If I stay in council territory, I will eventually be found and return to my clan for judgment. There is nowhere for one like me to go. Marcus thought about this, turning the problem over in his mind. He'd spent years learning how to navigate the complex bureaucracy of space stations and colonies. He'd seen plenty of beings in difficult situations, and he learned that there were usually solutions if you were willing to look for them. What if there was another way, he asked. What if you didn't have to hide? Luna looked at him skeptically. What do you mean? I mean, what if you could stay? Not hiding, but openly. There are laws about refugee protection, about minors who've been abandoned by their families. If you're as young as you seem, there might be options. I am 57 standard years old, Luna said. For dragons, this is still very young, barely more than a hatchling. But the council does not recognize dragon age classifications for legal purposes. 57 years old, Marcus repeated, trying to wrap his head around the concept. Dragons live for millennia, he knew. From their perspective, Luna really was just a child. That changes things. There are definitely protections for minors, regardless of species. For the first time since he'd found Luna, the hatchling looked hopeful. You truly believe there might be a way? I believe there's always a way, Marcus said with conviction. It might not be easy and it might take some time, but yes, I believe we can figure this out. Luna stared at him for a long moment, those golden eyes searching his face. Why? The hatchling asked finally. Why would you help me? I have nothing to offer you. I'm not even supposed to exist, according to my own kind. Marcus thought about his answer carefully. He could have talked about duty, about the basic decency that every sapient being deserved. He could have mentioned the laws and regulations that technically required him to help. But those weren't the real reasons, and Luna deserved the truth. Because, he said simply, you asked, because you're alone and scared and hurt, and I have the power to help. Because when I look at you, I don't see a dragon or a weapon or a symbol of power. I see a kid who needs someone to care about them. Luna's eyes filled with tears, actual tears, which surprised Marcus. He hadn't known dragons could cry. No one has ever cared about me before, Luna whispered. In the clan, I was simply another potential weapon to be forged. The elders saw only what I might become, never what I was. Well, Marcus said, feeling a familiar warmth in his chest that he'd thought he'd lost forever. Someone cares about you now. And I promise you, Luna, we're going to figure this out. Together. The hatchling nodded, some of the tension finally leaving its small form. Together, Luna repeated, as if testing out the word. I think I would like that very much. Marcus smiled and settled in more comfortably against the wall. Good. Now, why don't you get some rest? Tomorrow, we'll start working on making sure you have a real home, not just a hiding place. As Luna curled up in the alcove, wings wrapped around itself like a blanket, Marcus found himself thinking about the future for the first time in years. Not just his own future, but a shared one. He'd started the night as a lonely janitor going through the motions of living. But now, watching over a young dragon who'd chosen compassion over power, he felt something he'd thought was lost forever. He felt hope. Marcus woke to the sound of Luna, trying very hard to be quiet. The young dragon was attempting to fold its wings properly while examining the bandage Marcus had applied the night before, but each movement rustled against the metal walls of the alcove. In the morning light filtering through the maintenance tunnel's emergency strips, Luna's scales showed their full beauty, a shifting cascade of deep blues and purples that seemed to hold starlight within them. Morning, Luna, Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle the hatchling. How's the wing feeling? Luna's head turned toward him with a quickness that spoke of nervous energy barely contained. Much better, thank you. The pain is almost gone. I told you dragon healing was remarkable. Marcus sat up, working the kinks out his back. Sleeping on a maintenance tunnel floor wasn't exactly comfortable, but he'd done worse during his early years working the outer stations. Good. That means we can get started on our real work today. Real work? Luna's golden eyes were bright with curiosity. Getting you legal status, Marcus said, pulling out his personal data pad. I've been thinking about this all night. The first step is getting you registered with the station's Refugee Assistance Program. Luna's shifted uncomfortably. Is it safe? What if they report me to the Dragon Clans? They can't, Marcus assured her, scrolling through legal codes on his pad. Refugee protection laws specifically prohibit contact with the species or government that a person is fleeing from without explicit consent. And since you're technically a minor by human standards, which this station operates under, there are even stronger protections in place. The hatchling moved closer, peering at the screen with fascination. You know much about these laws? Marcus smiled ruefully. I've had to learn them over the years. Working the frontier stations, you meet a lot of people who are running from something. I've helped file paperwork for refugees before, though I'll admit you're my first dragon. Your first anything, I would think, Luna said quietly. Dragons do not often need help from others. The hesitation in Luna's voice told Marcus that the young dragon had been about to say something less diplomatic. He'd probably been taught that dragons didn't need help from lesser species, a mindset that Marcus was determined to gently challenge. Everyone needs help sometimes, Marcus said simply. Even dragons. Especially young dragons who've been through what you've experienced. They made their way through the station's corridors, Marcus leading the way while Luna stayed close behind him. The hatchling had wrapped itself in one of Marcus's spare work jackets, the hood pulled up to hide its distinctive features. To anyone who didn't look too closely, Luna might pass for a young member of one of the smaller humanoid species. The Refugee Assistance Office was located in the station's administrative sector, a collection of cramped offices that handled everything from immigration paperwork to trade disputes. Marcus had been there before, usually to help crew members who'd gotten into trouble or needed document renewals. The receptionist, a cheerful Altarian with blue skin and fur arms, looked up as they approached. Marcus, good to see you. What brings you to our little corner of bureaucracy today? Kayla, I need to speak with someone about refugee status application for a minor. Keela's expression immediately became more serious. Of course. Let me get Director Voss for you. She handles all the complex cases. Director Voss turned out to be a middle-aged human woman with gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She gestured for them to follow her into a small but tidy office that smelled of coffee and recycled air. Please sit, she said, settling behind her desk. Keela mentioned this is about a minor seeking refugee status. Marcus glanced at Luna, who gave a small nod. The hatchling slowly pushed back the hood of the jacket, revealing its scaled features and golden eyes. Director Voss's reaction was immediate and controlled. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't gasp or recoil. Instead, she leaned forward with professional interest. "A dragon," she said calmly. "That's certainly a first for this office. What's your name, young one?" My clan name cannot be spoken," Luna said carefully. "But Marcus calls me Luna, and I find I like this name very much. Luna it is then." Voss pulled up a form on her computer terminal. "Now, Luna, I need to ask you some questions. Are you fleeing persecution from your own people?" Luna nodded. "Yes. I was declared unworthy of my clan name because I refused to participate in the ritual killings required for the proving grounds. They said I was weak and brought shame to my bloodline." Voss typed rapidly, her expression grave. "And you're seeking protection under council refugee statutes?" "Yes," Luna said, then looked uncertainly at Marcus. "That is what I'm seeking, correct?" "That's exactly right," Marcus confirmed. Luna is 57 years old, which makes her a minor by dragon standards, and she's been living in hiding for weeks after fleeing her homeworld. 57, Voss murmured, making notes. "Dragon aging is complex for our legal system, but you're right that this qualifies her for minor protection statutes." She looked up at Luna with kind eyes. "The good news is that your case is actually quite straightforward from a legal perspective. Refusal to participate in religious or cultural practices that involve violence against sapient beings is explicitly protected under council law." Luna's wings rustled with what Marcus was learning to recognize as hope. "Does this mean I can stay?" "It means you have the right to stay," Voss clarified. "However, there are some practical considerations we need to address. Do you have any means of support? Somewhere to live?" Marcus spoke up before Luna could answer. "She can stay with me." Both Voss and Luna turned to look at him in surprise. He hadn't really planned to say that, but now that the words were out, he realized how right they felt. "Marcus," Luna said softly, "you cannot mean that. I would be a burden to you." "You wouldn't be a burden," Marcus said firmly. "My quarters are small, but there's room. And honestly, Luna, I could use the company." Voss looked between them with a thoughtful expression. "Mr. Chun, you understand that taking responsibility for a refugee minor is a significant commitment? There are legal obligations, regular check-ins with this office, educational requirements." "I understand," Marcus said. "And I'm ready for that responsibility." Luna was staring at him with an expression of wonder. "You would do this? Truly? You would take me into your home?" "If you want me to," Marcus said gently. "Only if you want me to." The young dragon was quiet for a long moment, seeming to struggle with emotions too large for words. When Luna finally spoke, the voice was barely above a whisper. "I have never had a home before. Only clan dormitories and proving grounds and hiding places. I do not know how to be part of family." Marcus felt his heart clench at those words. "Then, we'll figure it out together. That's what families do. They learn how to take care of each other." Director Voss cleared her throat softly. "If I may," she said, "I think this arrangement could work very well. Luna, you'd be eligible for educational programs, language classes if you need them, and eventually work permits once you reach majority age by station standards. Marcus, you'd receive a monthly stipend to help with Luna's care, and you'd both have access to our support services." "What about the dragons?" Luna asked, the fear creeping back into the voice. "What if my clan comes looking for me?" "They can't touch you here," Voss said with conviction. "Once your refugee status is approved, and I see no reason why it wouldn't be, you'll be under the protection of the Galactic Council. Any attempt to remove you from the station against your will would be considered kidnapping under interspecies law." Marcus watched Luna process this information, saw the moment when the young dragon truly began to believe in safety for the first time in months. "There's one more thing," Voss added carefully. "Luna, your case is likely to attract some attention. Dragons seeking refuge from their own kind is unprecedented. There may be media interest, possibly even political implications." Luna's scales shifted to a darker shade, reflecting anxiety. "Political implications?" "Dragon clans wield enormous influence in the council," Voss explained. "Your presence here, and the reasons for it, could potentially embarrass them. They might try to pressure the station administration to quietly return you to dragon space." Marcus felt a surge of protective anger. "They can't do that, can they? Legally?" "No. Politically?" Voss shrugged. "Politics can be complicated. But I want you both to know that this office will fight for Luna's rights every step of the way. What the dragon clans do to their own young is unconscionable, and it's time someone stood up to them. As they left the office an hour later, all the initial paperwork filed and a temporary identification card issued to Luna, Marcus felt both relief and apprehension. Luna walked beside him, still wearing his jacket, but with the hood down now, head held high with a dignity that reminded him of the young dragon's true heritage. "Marcus," Luna said as they stopped at an observation deck overlooking the station's main plaza, "I must ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course. What is it? Why are you doing this?" "Really?" Luna's golden eyes searched his face. "Humans are not known for taking in stray dragons. Your own kind would probably call you foolish for the risk you're taking." Marcus looked out at the plaza below, where dozens of different species moved about their daily business. Humans and Altarians, Zalari and Cephids, all living and working together in relative harmony. It had taken centuries for the various species to learn to coexist, and even now there were tensions and prejudices. But here, on this frontier station, he saw something that gave him hope. "I lost my family," he said quietly. "My wife and daughter died in an accident 5 years ago. Since then, I've been existing, I suppose, going through the motions. Working, sleeping, working again. I thought I was done with caring about people, done with family." Luna listened intently, not interrupting. "But last night, when I heard you crying in that tunnel, something woke up inside me. Something I thought was dead." Marcus turned to look at the young dragon. "I'm not doing this just to help you, Luna. I'm doing it because you've reminded me what it feels like to be alive." Luna was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then, to Marcus's surprise, the hatchling moved closer and gently pressed against his side. Not quite a hug, but something similar. "Thank you," Luna whispered, "for seeing me as more than just a failed dragon." "You're not a failed anything," Marcus said firmly, putting an arm around Luna's shoulders. "You're exactly what you're supposed to be. Someone who chooses compassion over cruelty, kindness over power. The galaxy needs more beings like you." As they stood there together, looking out at the diverse community below, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows across the plaza. The observer wore the traditional robes of a Dragon Clan representative, and his eyes burned with cold fire as he recorded everything he saw. Word of the runaway hatchling had already begun to spread through dragon space, and the clan elders were not pleased. Soon, they would have to decide what to do about this unprecedented situation, and about the human who had dared to interfere with dragon justice. But for now, in this moment, Marcus and Luna simply stood together, two beings who had found family in each other, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The real test was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since Luna had officially gained refugee status, and Marcus was amazed at how quickly life had found new rhythm. His small quarters had been transformed from a solitary refuge into something that actually felt like home. Luna had proven to be an eager student, devouring everything from basic galactic history to advanced mathematics, with a hunger that spoke of a brilliant mind finally allowed to flourish. The young dragon had also revealed an unexpected talent for engineering. While Marcus worked his maintenance shifts, Luna would study the station's technical manuals and often had suggestions for improving efficiency when he returned. The hatchling's natural understanding of energy flow and structural dynamics was remarkable, even if it sometimes manifested in ways that left Marcus both proud and slightly worried. "Marcus," Luna called from across their small living area, where the dragon was hunched over a tablet, wings folded neatly against its back. "I have been reading about human family structures, and I have a question." "Shoot," Marcus said, looking up from a dinner he was preparing, a simple pasta dish that had become one of Luna's favorites. "In human families, children often take the family name of their guardians. Since I have no clan name anymore, and you have given me a home." Luna's voice trailed off, suddenly shy. Marcus set down his cooking utensil and turned to face Luna fully. "Are you asking if you can take my name?" Luna nodded, scales shifting to a soft blue that Marcus had learned indicated nervousness. "If it would not dishonor you. I understand that family names have meaning to humans." The request hit Marcus harder than he'd expected. In the weeks since Luna had moved in, he'd grown to love the young dragon like his own child, but he hadn't dared to hope that the feeling was mutual. "Luna Chun," he said softly, testing out the sound. I like it. I like it very much." Luna's scales brightened to a brilliant silver, and for the first time since Marcus had known the dragon, Luna smiled. A real, unguarded expression of joy that transformed the hatchling's entire face. Luna, Chun, the dragon repeated, voice filled with wonder. I have a family name. I belong somewhere. Their celebration was interrupted by the chime of the apartment's communication system. Marcus frowned. They rarely received calls, and never this late in the evening cycle. The face that appeared on the screen made Marcus's blood run cold. It was Director Voss, but she looked haggard and worried in a way that immediately set off alarm bells. Marcus, Luna, I need you to come to my office immediately. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Marcus asked, though he was already reaching for his jacket. The kind that involves a dragon delegation demanding the immediate return of stolen clan property, Voss said grimly. They're claiming Luna was kidnapped and is being held illegally. Luna made a small, frightened sound and instinctively moved closer to Marcus. They found me, the dragon whispered. I knew they would eventually, but I hoped. Hey, Marcus said firmly, putting a protective arm around Luna. Nobody's taking you anywhere. We'll figure this out. The walk to the administrative sector felt like a march to an execution. Luna stayed close to Marcus's side, the dragon's usual confident bearing replaced by the hunched, fearful posture he remembered from their first meeting. Other station residents they passed gave them curious looks. Word had gotten around about the human janitor who'd adopted a dragon refugee, and most reactions have been positive. Tonight, though, Marcus felt like they were being watched by unfriendly eyes. Director Voss's office had been transformed. The small, comfortable space had been expanded by opening connecting rooms, and now it felt more like a courtroom. On one side sat three figures that made Marcus's mouth go dry. Dragons in their adult forms were magnificent and terrible to behold. Even seated, the three clan representatives towered over everyone else in the room. Their scales gleamed like polished armor, one deep red, one gold, one midnight black, and their eyes held the ancient intelligence and barely contained power that had made dragons the apex species of the galaxy. The red dragon spoke first, its voice a rich bass that seemed to vibrate through the floor itself. I am Pyraxes of the Flame Throne Clan, speaker for the Dragon Council in this matter. We have come to reclaim the hatchling known as Nixareth, who was stolen from our territory. Luna wasn't stolen, Marcus said, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. She sought refugee status after fleeing persecution. The Golden Dragon, who introduced herself as a realist of the Star Crown clan, fixed Marcus with a stare that felt like being examined by a very large, very intelligent predator. You are the human who claims guardianship over clan property. You will surrender the hatchling immediately. Clan property? Marcus felt anger building in his chest. Luna is a person, not property. The creature you call Luna is Nixareth, third hatchling of the Stormwind clan, the Black Dragon said, speaking for the first time. Its voice was colder than space itself. I am Vorthak, clan elder and bloodfather to the runaway. The hatchling belongs to us. Marcus felt Luna tremble beside him. The young dragon hadn't spoken since entering the room, but now Luna stepped forward slightly, voice barely audible but steady. I am no longer Nixareth. I chose a new name when I chose a new life. Vorthak's eyes blazed with fury. You chose nothing. You are a hatchling, incapable of making such decisions. You belong to the clan that birthed you, that fed you, that attempted to forge you into something worthy of our bloodline. Attempted and failed, Aurelius added dismissively. The hatchling is defective, lacking the proper predatory instincts of our kind. Nevertheless, it remains clan property. Director Voss, who had been taking careful notes throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. With respect, honored representatives, this station operates under Galactic Council law, not Dragon Clan law. Luna, Nixareth, has been granted refugee status after demonstrating credible fear of persecution. Persecution? Pyraxes laughed, a sound like a roaring flame. We sought only to educate the hatchling in our ways. If it lacked the strength to complete its trials, that is its own failure. Those trials involved killing helpless prisoners, Marcus said, his anger finally overcoming his caution. That's not education. That's indoctrination into murder. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as three ancient dragons turned their full attention to Marcus. He could feel the weight of their regard like a physical force, but he refused to back down. You dare judge our ways, human? Vorthack's voice was deadly quiet. Your species has existed for mere millennia. We have maintained order in this galaxy for over 1,000,000 years. And in all that time, have you ever once asked if your way was the right way? Marcus shot back. Have you ever considered that maybe strength isn't the only thing that matters? Aurelius leaned forward, her golden eyes gleaming. Strength is all that matters in the end, little human. It is strength that keeps the trade routes safe, strength that maintains the peace between species, strength that prevents chaos from consuming everything we have built. If that's true, Marcus said, looking directly at Luna, then why is the kindest, most intelligent being I've ever met also the strongest person I know? Luna chose mercy over murder, compassion over cruelty. That takes more courage than anything your trials could ever test. Luna's scales shifted to a brilliant blue, and for the first time since the dragons had arrived, the young dragon stood fully upright, meeting the elder's gazes directly. Marcus speaks truth, Luna said quietly. In the 3 weeks I have lived as part of his family, I have learned more about strength than in all my years in clan territory. I have learned that true power comes from choosing to help rather than harm, from building rather than destroying. Vorthack's expression was unreadable, but when he spoke, his voice carried a note of something that might have been regret. You speak like your mother did, Hatchling. She, too, believed in mercy and compassion. And, like her, you will learn that such beliefs are luxuries that dragons cannot afford. My mother. Luna's voice was suddenly very small. What happened to my mother? She died defending a colony of refugees from raiders, Vorthack said flatly. Her compassion made her weak, made her careless. She chose to protect the helpless rather than preserve herself, and it cost her everything. The room fell silent. Marcus watched Luna process this information, saw the young dragon's scales cycle through a dozen different colors as emotions warred across the hatchling's features. She died as she lived, Luna said finally, choosing to protect those who could not protect themselves. If that makes her weak in your eyes, then I am proud to be weak like her. Aurelius hissed with frustration. Enough of this sentiment. The law is clear. Clan hatchlings belong to their birth clans until they reach majority age. We demand immediate return of our property. Director Voss pulled up legal documents on her screen. Actually, the law is quite complex in this case. Luna has been granted refugee status based on credible fear of persecution. The Galactic Council's refugee protection statutes supersede clan law in such cases. The Council will not side against us in this matter, Pyraxes said confidently. Dragons provide too much stability to the galaxy. They will not risk our displeasure over one defective hatchling. Maybe, Voss said coolly, but until the Council rules on this specific case, Luna remains under the protection of this station and the Refugee Assistance Program. Vorthack stood, his full height making the room feel cramped. Very well. We will take this matter to the Council. But, know this, human. He fixed Marcus with a stare that promised retribution. When we return with Council authority, we will not be so courteous. You have interfered with clan justice, and that carries consequences. As the 3 dragons filed out of the room, their presence seemed to leave behind a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Marcus felt Luna sagging against his side, the adrenaline that had kept the young dragon upright finally, fading. They'll be back, Luna whispered. And when they return, they'll have the power to take me no matter what you do. Maybe, Marcus said, helping Luna to a chair. But we're not going to make it easy for them. And who knows? Maybe the Council will surprise us. Director Voss was already pulling up communication protocols on her computer. I'm filing an emergency appeal with the Council's Refugee Protection Division. It's a long shot, but there are precedents for cases where traditional cultural practices conflict with fundamental sapient rights. What can we do to help? Marcus asked. Document everything. Luna's treatment at the clan proving grounds, her reasons for fleeing, her successful integration into station life. The Council needs to see that this isn't just a case of a rebellious youth, but a genuine refugee seeking protection from persecution. Over the next several hours, they worked together to build Luna's case. The young dragon spoke with painful honesty about life in dragon territory, the constant pressure to prove worthiness through violence, the dismissal of any emotion as weakness, the gradual realization that the values being forced upon her were fundamentally wrong. As dawn approached on the station, Marcus found himself looking at Luna with new understanding. The young dragon hadn't just fled from physical danger. Luna had escaped from an entire way of thinking that would have eventually destroyed everything that made the hatchling unique and wonderful. "Whatever happens," Marcus said as they finally returned to their quarters, "I want you to know that these past 3 weeks have been the best of my life since I lost my first family. You've given me back something I thought was gone forever." Luna curled up on the small sleeping pad they'd set up near Marcus's bed, wings wrapped around like a blanket. "And you have given me the first real home I have ever known. Whatever the council decides, I am grateful." As Marcus lay in his own bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to Luna's quiet breathing, he made a promise to himself. No matter what political pressures the dragons could bring to bear, no matter what threats they made, he would not let Luna be dragged back to a life of forced violence and emotional suppression. Some things were worth fighting for, regardless of the odds. Some bonds, once formed, were stronger than law or tradition or the ancient power of dragons. Tomorrow, they would begin to fight for Luna's freedom in earnest. Tonight, they were still a family, and that was enough. The Galactic Council chambers on the orbital station were impressive by any standard, but today they felt overwhelming. Marcus had never been inside the formal chambers before. Few station residents ever had cause to be. The circular room could hold representatives from over 200 different species, and today, it was nearly full. News of the dragon refugee case had spread throughout council space, and everyone wanted to witness this unprecedented challenge to dragon authority. Marcus sat in the witness section with Luna beside him, both of them dwarfed by the sheer scale of the proceedings. Luna had grown noticeably in the 6 weeks since the dragon delegation's first visit, but the young dragon still seemed impossibly small in this vast space dedicated to interspecies politics. "Remember," Director Voss had told him that morning, "just tell the truth. Don't try to make speeches or grand gestures." The council responds best to simple, honest testimony. The 3 dragon representatives sat in their designated section, their adult forms still magnificent, but somehow less intimidating in this space designed to accommodate beings of all sizes. They were flanked by additional dragons who had arrived over the past weeks, clan leaders, and council members whose very presence spoke to how seriously dragon society was taking this challenge to their traditions. The council speaker, an ancient Zalari whose species was known for their diplomatic skills, called the session to order. "We convene today to hear the case of the individual known as both Nixareth of the Storm Wind Dragon clan and Luna Chun, currently under refugee protection on Station Kepler 442b. The question before us is whether Dragon Clan law supersedes Council refugee protection statutes in cases involving minors." The first to speak was Vorthak, Luna's birth father. His testimony was formal and precise, laying out the legal claim that Luna remained clan property until reaching majority age by dragon standards. He spoke of tradition, of the necessity of maintaining order within clan structures, of the chaos that would result if every dissatisfied hatchling could simply declare independence. "The creature you call Luna is blood of my blood," Vorthak said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "By the laws that have governed dragon society since before most species achieved spaceflight, the hatchling belongs with its birth clan. To rule otherwise would be to destroy the foundation of dragon civilization." Aurelius spoke next, focusing on the broader implications. "If the council rules in favor of this refugee claim, it sets a dangerous precedent. What happens when young beings from other traditional societies seek to abandon their cultural obligations? What becomes of the bonds that hold our various civilizations together?" Several council members nodded thoughtfully at this argument. The galaxy's stability depended on maintaining the internal cohesion of its member species, and there was genuine concern about the precedent this case might set. Then, it was Director Voss's turn to present Luna's case. She had spent weeks preparing, and her presentation was methodical and devastating. She presented evidence of the brutal nature of dragon proving grounds, testimonies from other species about dragon justice in their territories, and most damning of all, recordings of previous council sessions where dragons had dismissed the rights of lesser species. "The question," Voss said, addressing the council directly, "is not whether dragon traditions should be respected. The question is whether those traditions supersede the fundamental rights that this council claims to protect for all sapient beings." Luna's case is not about a child rebelling against reasonable parental authority. It is about a young person fleeing ritualized murder and emotional abuse. When it came time for Luna to testify, the young dragon approached the speaker's podium with a dignity that made Marcus's heart swell with pride. Over the past weeks, Luna had grown not just physically, but in confidence and self-assurance. The frightened hatchling who had asked to stay in a maintenance tunnel had become a poised young being who stood before the galaxy's most powerful leaders without flinching. Honored representatives, Luna began, voice clear and steady. I stand before you not as Nixareth, who is bred to be a weapon, but as Luna Chun, who chooses to be a protector. 6 weeks ago, I was homeless, alone, and convinced that I was fundamentally broken because I could not bring myself to kill innocent beings. Luna's scales shifted to a soft blue, reflecting the emotion behind the words. Today, I have a home, a family, and, most importantly, I have learned that compassion is not weakness. It is the greatest strength any being can possess. The chamber was completely silent as Luna continued. In my time living with Marcus, I have seen what it means to choose kindness over cruelty every single day. I have learned that true strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves, not from destroying them to prove one's power. Several council members leaned forward, clearly moved by Luna's testimony. But Marcus could see that the dragon representatives remained unmoved, their expressions carved from stone. Luna took a deep breath before continuing. I know that my choice challenges ancient traditions. I know that it inconveniences those who would prefer that I simply comply with expectations. But I also know that if I return to clan territory, I will be forced to become something that I am not. I will be broken down and rebuilt as a weapon, and the being that I truly am will die. The young dragon looked directly at Vorthak. My father speaks of clan property and traditional obligations. But I'm not property. I am a person with thoughts and feelings and dreams of my own. I dream of using my knowledge of engineering to build things that help people, not weapons that destroy them. I dream of a future where dragons are known for wisdom and kindness, not just power and fear. Luna's voice grew stronger as the speech continued. Some of you may think I am too young to make such decisions. But I would ask you this. If you were forced to choose between killing innocent beings or being declared unworthy of your birthright, what would you do? If you had to choose between following traditions that demand cruelty or seeking a life that allows compassion, what would you choose? The chamber remained silent for a long moment after Luna finished speaking. Then, the council speaker called for Marcus to give his testimony. Walking to the podium felt surreal. Marcus had spent his entire adult life working behind the scenes, maintaining the infrastructure that kept civilization running. He'd never been at the center of anything important, never had his voice carry weight in matters of galactic significance. Honorable representatives, he began, I'm not a politician or a lawyer or a philosopher. I'm a maintenance worker who happened to find a scared child hiding in a tunnel. Everything that's happened since then has been the result of one simple principle. When someone needs help, you help them. Marcus glanced at Luna, drawing strength from the young dragon's encouraging expression. I've heard a lot today about traditions and legal precedents and political implications. But I think we're making this more complicated than it needs to be. Luna came to me as a refugee, and I did what any decent being should do. I provided shelter and support. The fact that Luna happens to be a dragon shouldn't change the basic morality of that situation. He turned to address Vorthak directly. You claim Luna as property, but in the 6 weeks she's lived with me, I've watched her grow into an extraordinary young person. She's brilliant. Her understanding of engineering and physics amazes me daily. She's kind. She volunteers at the station's medical clinic and has already helped improve several critical systems. She's brave. Standing up to centuries of tradition takes more courage than any trial by combat ever could. Marcus's voice grew passionate as he continued. Luna isn't broken or defective or weak. She's exactly what the galaxy needs more of. Someone who chooses to build rather than destroy, who sees strength in protecting others rather than dominating them. If Dragon Society can't recognize that, then the problem isn't with Luna. The problem is with Dragon Society. The chamber erupted in murmurs and discussions among the various species representatives. Several smaller species delegates were nodding in agreement, while others looked uncertain. The The dragon delegation's expressions had grown thunderous. Pyrax's stood to respond, his voice carrying the weight of ancient authority. The human speaks of morality as if his species invented it. But where was human morality when your people were destroying your own planet? Where was this compassion when humans were enslaving and slaughtering each other? Do not presume to lecture beings who maintained galactic peace while your species was still learning to use fire. The attack stung, but Marcus had expected something like it. He remained at the podium, his voice steady when he replied. You're absolutely right. Humanity has made terrible mistakes throughout our history. We've been cruel and destructive and short-sighted. But that's exactly why I recognize the choice Luna is making. Because I've seen what happens when people choose power over compassion, fear over understanding. I've seen the damage that kind of thinking can do. Marcus looked out at the assembled representatives. Every species in this chamber has probably made similar mistakes at some point in their development. The question isn't whether we've been perfect in the past. The question is whether we're willing to do better in the future. Luna represents the possibility of that better future. When the formal testimonies were complete, the council moved into deliberation phase. This involved hours of debate, with representatives from different species arguing about precedent, about the balance between cultural autonomy and individual rights, about the broader implications for galactic stability. Marcus and Luna waited in a small anteroom, listening to the muffled sounds of argument from the main chamber. Director Voss joined them, looking exhausted but cautiously optimistic. How do you think it's going? Marcus asked. It's hard to say. The smaller species are generally sympathetic to Luna's case, but they're worried about the political ramifications of opposing the dragons. The major powers are split. Some see this as an opportunity to check dragon influence. Others worry about destabilizing established power structures. Luna had been quiet throughout the waiting period, but now the young dragon spoke up. Whatever they decide, I want you both to know that these weeks have been the happiest of my life. For the first time, I feel like I know who I am and what I want to become. You're going to get that chance, Marcus said firmly. Whatever the council decides, we'll find a way to make sure you have the life you want. The wait stretched on for hours. Station time moved into the evening cycle, then late night, then early morning again. Representatives came and went, consulting with their governments, building coalitions, making the complex calculations that drove interspecies politics. Finally, as dawn broke over the station's external viewports, the council speaker called them back into the main chamber. The atmosphere was tense, with representatives sitting stiffly in their seats and speaking in hushed tones. The council has reached a decision, the speaker announced. By a vote of 137 in favor, 85 opposed, with 31 abstentions, we recognize the refugee status of the individual known as Lunachan. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief, but the speaker wasn't finished. However, the ancient Zalari continued. This decision comes with conditions. Lunachan's refugee status is provisional, subject to review in 5 standard years. During this time, she must demonstrate successful integration into council society and must not engage in any activities that could be construed as undermining Dragon Clan authority or encouraging other dragon hatchlings to abandon their traditional obligations. Luna stepped forward. I accept these conditions gladly. Vorthak rose from his seat, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Marcus thought the elder dragon might challenge the decision, might threaten consequences for the council's ruling. Instead, Vorthak approached Luna slowly, deliberately. The clan no longer recognizes you as blood, he said formally. You are dead to us. But he paused, and something that might have been pain flickered across his ancient features. Your mother would have been proud of the choice you made today. With that, the dragon delegation filed out of the chamber, leaving behind a silence that felt both triumphant and melancholy. Luna stood in the center of the great chamber, officially free for the first time in the young dragon's life. When Marcus reached the hatchling's side, Luna was crying, not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and joy. I'm free, Luna whispered. I'm really free. Yes, Marcus said, pulling his adopted daughter into a hug. You're free, and you're home. Outside the chamber windows, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, and, somewhere among them, the galaxy continued its ancient business of trade and politics and the slow, painful process of learning to live together. But here on one small station on the frontier, a human janitor and a dragon refugee had just proven that sometimes the most important changes begin with the smallest acts of kindness. The real work of building Luna's new life was just beginning, but for the first time since that night in the maintenance tunnel, Marcus felt certain that they could handle whatever challenges lay ahead. They were family now, officially and permanently, and nothing in the galaxy was stronger than that bond. 5 years had transformed everything, yet nothing had truly changed at all. Marcus still worked the maintenance shifts on Station Kepler 442b, still took pride in keeping the infrastructure running smoothly. The difference was that now he had help, brilliant, enthusiastic help that had revolutionized the way the station operated. Luna had grown dramatically over the past 5 years, not just physically, but intellectually and emotionally. At what would be 62 years old by human reckoning, still young by dragon standards, but approaching the Council's definition of majority, Luna had become one of the station's most valued residents. The young dragon now stood nearly as tall as Marcus, with scales that had deepened to a magnificent deep blue shot through with silver, and eyes that held wisdom far beyond their years. Marcus, Luna called from across the engineering bay, where they were working on upgrades to the station's power distribution system. The efficiency calculations are complete. If we implement the harmonic resonance modifications I designed, we can increase power output by 17% while reducing wear on the primary generators. Marcus grinned as he reviewed Luna's work on the diagnostic screen. His daughter, and that's how he thought of Luna now, completely and without reservation, had become a gifted engineer whose innovations were starting to attract attention throughout the sector. Several major corporations had already made offers for Luna services, but the young dragon remained committed to staying on the station that had become home. Brilliant as always, Marcus said, though I think you might want to run these numbers past Chief Engineer Ramirez before we implement them. You know how she gets about unauthorized modifications to critical systems. Luna laughed, a sound like wind chimes that had become Marcus's favorite music. She has already approved the modifications, she said, and, I quote, if Luna designed it, install it immediately. That dragon has forgotten more about power systems than most engineers ever learn. Their work was interrupted by the familiar chime of an incoming communication. Marcus expected it to be another routine maintenance request, but the face that appeared on the screen made both him and Luna freeze. It was Director Voss, but she looked older and more serious than Marcus had ever seen her. Behind her, he could glimpse what looked like official council representatives. Marcus, Luna, I need you to come to my office immediately. We have visitors from the Galactic Council's Refugee Review Board. Luna's scales shifted to a nervous purple. Today was the day, 5 years to the day since the Council had granted provisional refugee status. Today, the board would decide whether that status became permanent or whether Luna would have to seek sanctuary elsewhere. The walk to the administrative sector felt like a replay of that terrible night 5 years ago, but everything was different now. Luna walked with confidence, head held high, greeting the beings they passed with warm familiarity. Over the years, the young dragon had become beloved throughout the station, tutoring struggling students, volunteering at the medical center, helping solve technical problems that had stymied senior staff. The question wasn't whether Luna belonged here. The question was whether the galaxy's bureaucracy would recognize what everyone on the station already knew. Director Voss's office had been expanded again to accommodate the reviewing board. 3 beings sat at a formal table: a Zalari diplomat, a human administrator, and, to Marcus's surprise, a dragon. Not one of the clan representatives from 5 years ago, but a smaller dragon with silver scales and kind eyes. Please sit, the Zalari diplomat said formally. I am Ambassador Kelveth, chair of the Refugee Review Board. We are here to evaluate Lunachin's request for permanent refugee status and full council citizenship. The human administrator, a woman named Director Sarah Kim, consulted her tablet. Luna, in the 5 years since you were granted provisional status, you've become quite accomplished. Multiple commendations for engineering innovation, volunteer service awards, academic achievements that are frankly remarkable. Your integration into station society appears to be complete. Luna nadit pelaiti. Station Kepler 442b is my home. These people are my family and friends. I have never wanted to be anywhere else. The dragon representative spoke for the first time, her voice much gentler than the clan elders who had demanded Luna's return years ago. I'm Seraphina of the Moonlight Clan. I was sent by the Dragon Council to evaluate your case from our perspective. Marcus tensed. He'd assumed the Dragon clans had washed their hands of Luna after the original ruling. The presence of an official Dragon representative suggested the situation might be more complicated than he'd hoped. Am I being recalled? Luna asked quietly. Not recalled, exactly, Seraphina said carefully. But your case has had ramifications within Dragon society. In the 5 years since your refugee status was granted, 7 other young dragons have fled clan territory. 4 have been returned by force, but 3 have successfully claimed refugee status with other council species. Ambassador Kelvith leaned forward. This has created significant political tension between the dragon clans and the council. Some clan leaders are demanding that your status be revoked to discourage further defections. Marcus felt a familiar surge of protective anger. Luna isn't responsible for what other dragons choose to do. No, Director Kim agreed, but her case has become symbolic, both for dragons seeking to escape clan control and for council members who believe that traditional authority structures need to be challenged. Seraphina's expression was thoughtful. Luna, I must ask you directly. Have you encouraged other young dragons to abandon their clans? Luna was quiet for a moment before answering. I have corresponded with several young dragons who reached out to me over the galactic networks. When they asked about my experiences, I told them the truth, that I found happiness and purpose in choosing compassion over violence, in building rather than destroying. If that encouraged them to make similar choices, I cannot regret it, even knowing that some of them were forcibly returned and punished for their attempts to flee. Seraphina's voice held no judgment, only curiosity, especially knowing that, Luna said firmly, if my example gives even one young dragon the courage to choose a better path, then everything I've endured has been worthwhile. Marcus watched the review board exchange glances. This was clearly not going the way any of them had expected. Ambassador Kelvith consulted his notes. Luna, there's something else we need to discuss. Your accomplishments here haven't gone unnoticed. The Council's Engineering Corps has offered you a position designing infrastructure for new colony worlds. It's an extraordinary opportunity for someone your age, but it would require you to leave Station Kepler 442b. Luna's scales shifted to a surprised silver. I had not expected that. Neither had we, Director Kim said. But your innovations in power distribution and environmental systems have revolutionized efficiency standards throughout this sector. Several colony worlds have specifically requested your expertise. Marcus felt his heart sink. He'd always known this day might come, that Luna's talents would eventually be recognized beyond their small station. But the thought of losing his daughter, even to such an incredible opportunity, filled him with dread. What would this position involve? Luna asked carefully. Travel throughout council space, Ambassador Kelvith explained. Working with different species on different worlds, solving complex engineering problems, helping new colonies become self-sustaining. It would be challenging, prestigious work that could shape the future of galactic expansion. Luna was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then, to everyone's surprise, the young dragon smiled. I'm honored by the offer, truly. But I must decline. The review board looked stunned. Director Kim spoke first. Luna, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Are you certain you want to refuse? Completely certain, Luna said with conviction. My life's work isn't in the stars. It's here with my family, on the station that gave me a home when I had none. Marcus felt tears gathering in his eyes. He'd been prepared to support Luna's decision whatever it was, but hearing his daughter choose family over prestige filled him with pride beyond words. Seraphina leaned forward with interest. And what do you see as your life's work? Luna's expression grew passionate. I want to establish a sanctuary program here on Station Kepler 442b. A place where young beings from any species can find refuge when traditional authorities fail them. Dragons, yes, but also any young person who needs a safe place to discover who they really are. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at his daughter with amazement. Luna had never mentioned this idea before, but now that he heard it, it seemed perfectly obvious. Of course, Luna would want to help others the way they've been helped. You want to institutionalize what happened to you 5 years ago, Ambassador Kelvith said slowly. I want to make sure no young person has to hide in a maintenance tunnel, afraid and alone, ever again, Luna said firmly. I want to create a place where questioning traditional authority doesn't mean losing everything you've ever known. Director Kim was taking rapid notes. This would require significant funding, legal framework, coordination with multiple species governments. And it would be extraordinarily controversial, Serafina added. Dragon clans would see it as a direct attack on their authority. Luna's scales shifted to a determined gold. Then they can oppose it, but they can't stop it. Not if the council supports it, and not if young dragons know they have somewhere safe to go. Marcus found his voice at last. Luna, this is an incredible idea, but are you sure you want to take on something this big? The political implications alone. Marcus, Luna said gently, 5 years ago, a human janitor chose to help a desperate dragon hatchling, even though it could have cost him everything. That single act of kindness changed both our lives. Imagine what we could accomplish if we made that kind of kindness systematic, available to anyone who needed it. The review board spent another hour discussing details, legal requirements, and potential obstacles. By the time they finished, the sun had set outside the office windows, but the room felt brighter than it had all day. Very well, Ambassador Kelvith said finally. Luna Chun, by the authority vested in me by the Galactic Council, I hereby grant you permanent refugee status and full council citizenship. Furthermore, the council will provide initial funding and legal support for your proposed sanctuary program, should you choose to pursue it. Luna's scales blazed with joy, cycling through every color Marcus had ever seen and several new ones. Thank you, all of you. You won't regret this decision. Serafina stood to leave, but paused at the door. Luna, I want you to know that not all dragons oppose what you're doing. Some of us have watched your journey with great interest, and we believe change is necessary. You may find you have more allies among our people than you expect. After the representatives had gone, Marcus and Luna walked home through the station's corridors in comfortable silence. The familiar sounds of life around them. Conversations in a dozen different languages, the hum of machinery, the laughter of children, felt like a symphony celebrating their victory. Are you sure about turning down the engineering corps position? Marcus asked as they reached their quarters. It really was an incredible opportunity. Luna settled onto the couch they'd installed when the dragon had outgrown the small sleeping pad, wings folding comfortably around the familiar space. Marcus, do you remember what you told me that first night? You said you were done with caring about people, done with family. I remember, but you weren't really done. You were just waiting for the right person to care about. Luna's golden eyes were bright with affection. I've spent 5 years learning what home means, what family means. Why would I want to leave that to chase prestige among strangers? Marcus settled beside his daughter, feeling the warmth of Luna's presence like a physical comfort. Besides, Luna continued, there's so much work to do here. We need to design the sanctuary facilities, establish the legal frameworks, create the support systems. And we'll need to train staff who can help young beings from dozens of different species. Marcus asked with a grin. Well, I assume you want to be involved in your daughter's life's work, Luna said teasingly. Unless you're planning to stick with maintenance tunnels forever. Marcus laughed, the sound echoing off the walls of their small home. I think I could be convinced to take on a new challenge. Sanctuary Director Marcus Chun has a nice ring to it. They spent the evening planning, dreaming, imagining the sanctuary they would build together. It would be a place where young beings could find safety, education, and, most importantly, the kind of unconditional love that had transformed both their lives. It would be challenging, controversial, and absolutely essential. As Luna finally settled in for the night, wings wrapped around like a blanket in the gesture Marcus had grown to love, the young dragon spoke one last time. Marcus, thank you for everything, for seeing me as more than just a failed dragon, for teaching me that family isn't about blood or species or tradition, for showing me that the strongest thing anyone can do is choose kindness. Thank you too, Luna, for reminding me what it means to be alive, for being the best daughter I could ever have hoped for proving that sometimes the most important revolutions start with the smallest acts of compassion. Outside their windows, the stars wheeled in their eternal patterns, indifferent to the small dramas of the beings who dwelt among them. But here on one frontier station, a human and a dragon had proven that sometimes those small dramas could reshape the galaxy itself. Tomorrow, they would begin building something new, a sanctuary for the lost, the different, the ones who chose compassion over conformity. It would grow slowly at first, but eventually it would span systems, providing hope for countless young beings across the galaxy. And it had all started with a simple question from a desperate child. May I stay here tonight? The answer, Marcus knew now, would always be yes. For Luna, for the young refugees that would help in the years to come, for anyone who needed to know that they belonged somewhere. In the end, that was what humanity brought to the galaxy. Not superior technology or overwhelming firepower, but the stubborn insistence that no one should face the universe alone. It was perhaps the most